Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons for another Earthworks Podcast. Today, I have a friend who I call a friend loosely, I think, Mr. Jeff Broadbelt, who is actually now currently working for the Dryject company. And we're going to talk a lot about Dryject today. But we're also going to talk about Jeff and his experience. He's been a superintendent for a very, very long time in some pretty amazing places in the Philadelphia marketplace, as well as a whole bunch of other things. As you know, Mr. Broadbelt, I am extremely nervous about trying to get through this entire podcast with you because you and I go back probably to the early 90s, I'm guessing, and have. Yeah, I would think, right? You were Chester Valley, and I think every single time I talk to you, I tend to be leaving in stitches and other childish ventures. So let's try to keep this as professional as we can.
No puns allowed.
No puns allowed. Exactly. Exactly. So those who we're going to talk about the Dryject, because the reason I really wanted you on today is because you've been working with the Dryject company for a while. But I want to start at the very beginning of Jeff Broadbelt, not the real beginning. Let's just start at the professional beginning. If there ever really was.
Name.
Yeah, exactly. At least at the professional beginning. You've done a lot of stuff. You and I talked about this the other day, and I didn't realize all of the golf course, experience that you've had. And, I think you and I hooked up, no pun intended, at the time you got to Chester Valley Country Club. And that was probably early 90s, right? I mean, when did you get to Chester Valley?
I took that job in 86.
There you go. So I met you. You were probably one of the first superintendents I ever really worked with. And if I'd only known better, I might have left the industry.
You would have stayed away.
I would have stayed away. Exactly. So walk me through Jeff Broadbelt's experience. You've got a whole bunch of experience, and you can drop a whole bunch of interesting names. And I think we should do that because there's some pretty interesting folks that you've had a chance to work with that a lot of people know well, and will recognize names. But where did it all start in terms of the golf course thing for you?
All right. Well, God, I think it was like in 1979, I got a summer job at Aronimink.
I've heard of that place. Is it any good?
Yeah, it's fair.
It's not bad. Yeah,
it's fair. Yeah, it's okay.
Not bad.
So, guess who got me that job? Jeff Edwards, right? You know Jeff Edwards.
Yes, I do. Jeff's great.
So he worked on the crew along with his brothers.
How did you know Jeff?
He went to high school with me.
Great Valley High School.
Yeah, you might know that high school.
I went there once, yes, for a very short period of time. Jeff and I are both from Malvern, Pennsylvania. We both went to the same high school, but luckily not at the same time, or we may not have survived our high school career.
We wouldn't have graduated.
We probably wouldn't.
That would have been trouble.
Yeah, it would have been bad. It would have been very bad.
So anyhow, so that was a summer job, and that's all it was. I had no aspirations of getting into the business. Of course, what 16 or 17-year-old would at that point.
Yeah.
And so I worked there for 1 year, and I went to Chester Valley to work on a crew just because it was closer to home. Really, basically, that's it. Then I went to Penn State. Then I decided, what am I going to do the rest of my life? I worked there for a couple of years, and it's like, maybe I should do this because I don't know what else I'd do.
What else will I do? I'll just do this.
I liked it. I think I fell in love with it for the same reason that everybody else does.
Yeah.
Great outdoors.
It's a great industry.
Yeah, it's a good industry, yeah. So then went to Penn State, did an internship at Marion, worked under Richie, which was
Penn State for turf?
Yeah, for turf.
So you have a turf degree, and you went with
it's the 2-year program I went with.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And you went to school with some people that we know quite well, in particular Mr. Chissard, I heard.
Yeah, Mr. Chissard, of course.
It was one of our first podcast interviews, and an old friend who I won't talk ill of because I have a lot of history on him as well.
Oh, I know.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think we both do.
Yes, we do. So you went to work for Richie Valentine, a name that a lot of people in this industry know well.
Yeah, great guy.
And who was working there with you at the time?
God, who was there? That was, well, of course, Tom and Rick. We called him Rick then, but then he changed it back to Rich.
Yeah.
His sons.
Right.
Armin Suni had just left. He went to Rolling Green, so I missed working with him. And to go back in time a little bit, Armin Sooney worked at Aeronomic when I went there.
So you worked with Armin a little bit.
I worked, and he was a foreman, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Armin is a dear friend we've known for a long time. We hope to get on this podcast one of these days. If you're listening, Armin, I extend that olive branch as we speak.
Tony Gustitis worked at Aeronomic too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Long-term superintendent in the Philadelphia area.
A couple other ones also. But anyhow, back to
Richie.
Yeah, Marion. Who worked there? Brian, but I can't remember his name. He went on to be a super. I mean, that place just pumped out superintendents.
Yeah, constantly.
I can't pull out names that besides some of the old Italians that we'd take them home and drink their homemade wine and catch a pretty good buzz and eat hard-boiled eggs.
We don't need to talk about that on this podcast, but that's good.
Okay, you can cut that out.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So then after Marion, I went back and finished school and went to Rolling Green as an assistant for Joe Osick. And of course, you know Joe.
Yes, we know Joe well.
Yeah, and Joe, both of us were
Good
young.
man.
We probably had the youngest crew around. Literally, I think he was 21 and I was 22.
Wow.
Because Armin had left for Cherry Hills.
Yeah.
Out in Denver.
So Joe took over for Armin at Rolling Green.
Yeah, because he was Armin's assistant.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was the next one after Armin.
Right. And so that was a great experience. I was there for 2 years, and then I was fortunate enough to get the superintendent's job at Chester Valley. So it's full circle back to Chester Valley.
Wow.
And that was in 1986.
So you started, I didn't realize it was that long ago. So I must have met you in the very early 90s. Because how long were you at Chester Valley?
9 years.
So yeah, so because
95, the spring of 95, I went to Downingtown Country Club.
Okay.
Which was an old resort course, but it was in a total disarray. It was a mess. It was the resort had closed, and there was a management firm in there basically running it into the ground and collecting green fees. But it was a great George Fazio course. That the blueprint of it was fabulous. The layout was very nice. Great walkable course. The green complexes were fabulous, and we went in to fix that place up. And you know, my peers thought I was nuts leaving a great job at Chester Valley Private Club and going to this, what? You're going to Downingtown Country Club? I don't think it was even called Country Club.
I don't think it was a country club.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think so, Jeff.
Yeah, Downingtown.
Dog track. Yeah.
Dog track.
It was really pretty bad. I remember I was with you when you went over there, and I remember going over there and thinking, what's wrong with you? I just want to smack you in the back of the head. I mean, you just left a wonderful country club and came here, but it was fascinating. I mean, all the things that you guys did, you know, at Downingtown and the work that was put in there and the changes that you made.
Well, to drop more famous names.
Oh, please do.
It was the first Gill Hanse solo job that he did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was just finishing up with Stonewall.
Right.
Stonewall in Chester County, western side of Chester County, with Tom Doak. So he was a co-designer with Tom Doak, and he went out on his own, and he needed work. He wanted work, right? And Rodney Hine was the superintendent of Stonewall. He went to work
for
with Gill.
He was his shaper.
Rodney was the one that contacted me. Yeah, I was going to do it all myself and just hire bulldoze operators and just direct them with my great directing ability, like dig here, do. And he came over and said, well, we're starting up. He'll come over and operate and help you think this through. And I'm like, how much you charge, right? And it's like, it was about the same price probably as hiring shapers that didn't know what they were doing, that I would have had to babysit the whole time. So that was a fabulous experience with him. And the product when we were done was great.
It was beautiful. I mean, and I don't know, a lot of people know, but Gill is actually from Malvern, where we're talking about. Malvern is where I spent a couple of years. You grew up, and you know, we went to high school, but Gill was literally right up the street. I didn't know this for years, and I didn't realize that Rodney was at Stonewall. And Rodney is now where? Up in Boston area somewhere.
Yeah, Boston.
At the country club? They're somewhere.
Country Club or Boston Golf Club.
Yeah.
Either Gill built it or he rebuilt it. I thought it might have been a TPC associated with that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I remember Rodney quite well back in the days when he was doing that. I guess I probably met him on your property. when they did that. So did you know Gill at the time? Did you know Gill before you started this project? Did you know he was local? Did you know anything about him?
No, I knew nothing really.
Did you know the work that he had done with Doak?
I probably knew of it. I was aware of what was going on at Stonewall.
Yeah.
But I probably was thinking more, when Stonewall first started, it was actually a Fazio design.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was always Doak.
They commissioned Fazio. He did a routing plan. They said, well, maybe we don't want to go with it for whatever reason. I have no idea. And they contacted Doak, and Hanse and Doak were, good friends or associates. And Hanse ended up being on the job with Doak, and they, it was agreed that they were co-designers.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was Rodney just cold called me, and it was
he knew you were doing the work at Downingtown.
Yeah, I guess everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Well, exactly.
in this world.
Small world, especially.
And it was great. It was all a la carte too. It wasn't like a fixed price.
Yeah.
You just charged me for what he did. We'd go out and brainstorm. What about if we put a bunker here? The great thing was I could do whatever I wanted to.
Why? Because the owner gave you that privilege, or did Gill Hanse and crew let you just do whatever you want? Because that could be very dangerous.
Well,
you doing it whatever you want to.
The owner gave me the privilege.
Wow, that's pretty lucky.
Because nobody else knew what to do, right? That's what I was hired for. And of course, Gill had a major influence.
Of course.
Yeah. But both of us, we just decided, I did a ton of work at Chester Valley, bunker improvements. And at one time, I almost did what I wanted to at Chester Valley. I got away with a lot of stuff to their benefit, though, because at the boards of these private clubs will drive you insane and think about, wait a minute, I think you ought to move that bunker over 3 inches. No, wait a minute, 4 inches. Are you kidding me? We shouldn't move it at all. And I would just go out and do it, and they'd go, it looks good. Right. Yeah. So I did a lot of improvements at Chester Valley under that extended honeymoon period.
Right. 5-year extended honeymoon. Who was the original architect at Chester Valley?
That was George Fazio also when they rebuilt it in 72.
Okay. So you were working off of a Fazio design, and you were just making some tweaks.
Yeah.
And doing some stuff from there.
Well, bunker work. I rebuilt every bunker. I relocated some tees.
Yeah.
No greens rebuilt because they didn't need it. They since did rebuild some greens that were sloped, very sloped. Yeah. But that's related to green speed, as you know.
Right.
They're making some of these old greens obsolete because they're speeding them up like crazy.
Right. Yeah. They're impossible to do it. Chester Valley was one of those courses in, when we were in high school that we all kind of hung out on, because there were kids from all around that neighborhood, and we'd go over and hang out. And I have a number of stories that I won't share completely, but we'd go across the street and hang out on one of those greens or fairways and just kind of sit around late at night and, do whatever kids would do back in those days in high school. But I think I ran into many school kids in that thing. Applebrook was the same way. If you remember Applebrook, which was Applebrook in Malvern, Gill Hanse design.
Yeah.
That was Gill as well.
Yeah,
right?
Applebrook.
So there was if you know Applebrook at all, and it's a beautiful design. I think he probably did that after he did Downingtown, I'm guessing. That was a
few years after.
Yeah, there was a big tree in the middle of that property, and that was a place that when we were in high school, and you probably did the same. We used to go out into that field and we would hang out, and then now, years later, you become a professional in this golf industry, and like, wait a second, I recognize that tree. I know that tree. Wait, what's it doing here? And where's all the carvings and the bottles that were left around the base of it?
We used to call it the clump of trees.
The clump of trees.
It was a clump of trees, and there was probably one beautiful tree in it.
Yeah.
And we would do the same thing. It was the old
Pfizer property or something.
Yeah, or SmithKline.
SmithKline, yes, exactly. It was an old research facility for farms.
I used to ride my motorcycle and 4-wheel drive out there. Motorcycle,
They let you have a motorcycle? Nobody should have ever let you have.
It was very dangerous.
It was, for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know the property.
So you were a few years behind me at high school, so that scenario was still going on even then. And now it's a beautiful Gill Hanse design. And now look where Gill is. He's one of the premier golf course architects in the world, and
Right.
with a resume as long as your arm. And we had Rusty on from Stream Song, and he just finished the black course down there. If you listen to the Rusty Mercer podcast with us, we talk a lot about that property. But it's I didn't realize until just now that this was a Gill Hanse project with you. One of the things I remember those days with you at Downingtown is that you were a stickler, and you probably still are, for doing spreadsheets, and you've always been very analytical and focused. And I'll never forget walking into your office so many times, and you have this huge spreadsheet of every little tiny detail that was going on that property, and it's been your reputation probably ever since.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, when I went to, I wrote good budgets and kept good records at Chester Valley, right? So that's a superintendent's world, right? But when I went to Downingtown, I had to do the whole retail end of it.
Right.
So I had to write the budgets for all that and literally worry about merchandise, not so much food and beverage. We hired a group to do that.
Right.
And so spreadsheets became more important to me. And I enjoy working with Excel. So
what's your advice to a young guy that just took a job as a superintendent, and the importance of really focusing on those numbers and the budgets? And I mean, is there a secret to making it easy?
Not really. It's just understanding how to get around in Excel and just keep working at it until it makes sense.
Yeah.
Realistically. But I say that if I hadn't learned, now back when I learned, it was Lotus, right?
Right. Before Excel.
The old spreadsheet, but then Microsoft made Excel, right? But if I didn't learn how to use that, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go to Downingtown, because it was my budgeting process. Now, I had a good reputation of knowing how to grow grass, right?
Right.
Because Chester Valley was right down the road. But when I went to the developer, who was a big time developer, and plopped a budget in front of him with a 5-year projection of number of rounds, how much money would drop to the bottom line, it was a high-end daily fee was the goal. I remember him go, he looked up at me and he said, "Did you write this budget?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that helped me get the job, just understanding the numbers. I mean, you could write gibberish in a budget, but if you can defend what the line items are,
right,
it's impressive. It's for young people they should learn how to budget and learn well. But I think nowadays they are much better at it, just because they're so computer savvy.
And the technology is better. But think about that. I mean, if you can walk into an interview and show a prospective employer your expertise in managing a budget, I mean you're dealing with people that are, for the most part, probably business people. They may not know anything about biological soil management or CECs, but they'll know a budget. And if you can walk in and start talking their language, as you did, and that's, like you said, that's how you got this job. Imagine the strength that brings to your opportunity in getting the next job down the road. So it's just so important to be able to figure out. And Excel, you can do an awful lot without knowing hardly anything. If you really know it, you can do a tremendous amount. I mean, as business people now, you and I obviously stare at budgets and Excel spreadsheets all day long. But for a young kid coming out of turf school, did they even teach you guys that at Penn State? See, if you had gone to Rutgers, you would have gotten all that, because we had.
Darn it all!
But anyway, so I didn't know this until you just said this before we got started. But you have been working with the Pennsylvania Superintendent's Board for most of your professional life. I did not realize that. How did that start, and what is that you're doing, and what all has happened with that?
Okay, so in '89, I was approached to run, and I think a lot of the supers are always asked, "Hey, you got to give back to run for the board." In 1989, when I was at Chester Valley, and I'm like, okay, and I got elected, believe it or not.
Wow.
So I
must have been your friends on the board. Jeff was on the board, a couple other people that just to let you slide in.
Yeah, we know. So, and they appointed me. I think it was a combo, environmental committee / government relations, right? And I'm like, okay, who's done this before so I can have some kind of education on it? Well, we just made it's new.
It's brand new. You're the first in.
If you remember, at the time, there was a lot of scuttlebutt going around with legislation, with chemicals, the chem laws of the world, right?
Yeah.
And and so it was a hot topic as far as superintendents and PR is concerned. But I was like, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to light the world on fire as a little guy from Philadelphia area, and I'm going to change the whole state of Pennsylvania because all legislation is written in PA, right?
Exactly.
So what I did was I started calling all the other chapters. There's 7 chapters in the state of Pennsylvania, right? We're an old state, so we're not like the Carolinas where there's one big, or I think there's a couple, but
there's
2
a couple
really big chapters that can communicate well together and blend. The 7 chapters all had different opinions, right?
Right.
They didn't purposely do it. It's natural because they weren't really talking to each other. I contacted them. I had John Chassard involved with me, Jared Golden at Hershey's Mill, Don Brown at White Manor.
Another Great Valley person, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then other guys from the other chapters that were interested enough. Dave Rafferty, he was central. Great guy. He was a Chambersburg. He died. It must have been 15 or so years ago. But he was a great leader. He was the first president. But myself and Dave were the guys that really pushing it through. And again, Chassard and Jared and Don and other people from the different chapters. We formed it, wrote bylaws, and we said this is our mission: is to have one voice in the state. So
you're talking environmental mission, right?
And legislative. We've actually had a lobbyist at one time, and it had nothing to do with turf, but we actually weighed in on when we thought high school should start. They were talking about starting in mid-August, and we're like, well, look, if we're going to have an opinion, we want you to keep starting at the beginning of September, because we want our high school kids to be around to cut
trees. To stay working on the golf course.
We might as well weigh in on it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So an interest in
that I didn't have a high level of interest when stuff like that came across. He would give us a list.
Yeah.
It was more of the important stuff like the nutrient management stuff that's going around, which you well know of.
Yep.
The Chesapeake Bay Initiative and all that. So we would have a collective voice representing all 7 chapters now, a unified voice, so that had meaning in the state.
Right.
Much better than each chapter saying, I can accept being limited to 5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per season. And the other says, I'm fine with 8, but no going any lower than that. It makes you look silly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you brought all the chapters together and you started having a collective conversation. Had that been done at all prior to you guys pulling this all together?
Well, prior to that, they had a group called the Allied. In fact, we called ourselves the Allied at that time.
I remember that.
And it was kind of like an ad hoc group, quickly put together, very loosely. You're gonna run it this year. But it was really not much happened. And I'll tell you what started the whole thing was when John Siggy was running for director and worked his way up the chain to be the president of the GCSAA.
The national.
Yeah. The national. So that Allied group was only formed for political reasons for the most part, to lobby, to get all the chapters to pull their voting and get Siggy in, which was a good choice. Siggy was a great leader, right? So, I'm glad that they did that. I wasn't involved with them at the time, but we're like, look, that loose group was there. It was called the Allied. Okay, we'll call this the Allied, right? But we're going to have a different mission. It's not to get people elected. I could care less about that, right?
Yeah.
Really, because that wasn't our mission. And we would still get involved with it though, because we were there and we were together, and people would say, can we talk about how we're going to get Mark Coons? We're going to pool to get Mark Coons, for example.
Right.
And they'd reach a collective decision. Again, it wasn't important to me. But
you're still on the board though, right?
Yeah, I'm the forever treasurer now. There's my Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, see what happens?
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have talked about that.
Yeah.
So you get really good at it and you get stuck in a job that you don't want for the rest of your life.
Yeah, so I was on the board until late 90s, and I became president, and I was president for 3 years. And I forget who followed me. It might have been John Shaw out of Pittsburgh area. I don't know if you know him.
A little bit. Yep.
Yeah. And I said, listen, John, I'll stay on doing the treasurer. The bank's near me, right? I mean, it's not an overabundance of work.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want me to, right? And he said, sure, right? I don't know why anybody would say no, right? And so John Shaw gave up his presidency, and I don't know if it was Rick Paget or who was in between. I'd have to literally pull the folder out to find out who was all the leaders, right? But Rick Paget's been the president for at least 6 years now. He's up to Penn State courses. And so I just always offered it to the new president. You want me to do it? So now it's like, not only am I the treasurer, I'm kind of like the resident historian.
Oh, great.
What did you do back in,
remember
what are we here
back
for?
in the day?
And all the heads turned to me. Well, this is hard.
Let's talk to him.
Yeah. Anyhow, so
That's too funny. All right, let's get into why we wanted to talk today anyway. So let me just make sure I can finish the connection here. You went from Downingtown. You did a couple other weird, some other strange things for a little bit before you ended up getting hooked up with the whole Dryject system. What was there anything that we want to talk about, or should we just go right to Dryject?
I don't like you using the word strange. When
Well, it seems a little interesting.
Oh.
Maybe interesting. I should use the word interesting.
Well, let me just finish the golf arena. When I was with that developer, we bought a club down the road. It was a lower priced daily fee Ingleside golf club.
Strange, yeah, that's what I meant.
Had Gill Hanse on that, helped me reduce my.
I didn't know that either.
Rerouted the course, right?
Wow.
It was a low price daily fee short course, but
So we can actually say that Jeff Broadbelt is why Gill Hanse is a premier architect these days. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'll call Bill and see if he's okay with that.
I don't know that he would agree with that, but I'm sure you would say that.
Had to help a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Somebody, in that industry, you got to get your start. And I know both properties well, and they were both really, really well done.
Yeah, I think you're forgetting one. We built from scratch French Creek Golf Club right across from Stonewall, of all places.
Yeah.
Right? French Creek Golf Club was Gill Hanse.
Yeah.
And that was a project I put together, made the deal with the landowners and all that. Kind of fulfilled the dream to build a golf course from scratch.
Yeah. Which, how do you describe that golf course? I find it fascinating. Architecturally, it's spectacular. But as a pretty lousy golfer, I think a lot of people that I talk to, or maybe I said this is either a golf course that's going to make you a great golfer or get you out of golf for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
There's some carries that I can't, I just look at it and I cry. I just whine and moan and stuff, That's,
right. Well,
stuff.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, of course you do.
Right. So I was involved with designing a course that I can't play very.
Right, so, exactly.
So I would say, as a macro description, I'm going to say links, right? The term links is a little bit overused. It's obviously an inland course, but it has a linksy feel.
It's open and linky.
Yeah, there are a couple holes that go through some trees that we had to cut down, but it's mostly open.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of risk reward, where there's a couple different choices to make. That's Gill Hanse 101 right there. Choice when you're on the tee.
And now knowing what Gill has done, and having kind of grown up with, some of these projects locally with Gill, and seeing his work, and then knowing French Creek as well as I do. Like I said, it's a tough course. There's some carries there that are tough. There's that one par 3 that's kind of parallel to the tee box, and if you miss it, you've got 7 shots to get back on. It either wants you to be the love golf or just despise golf. But from an architectural standpoint, it's really quite spectacular. Yeah. I always was amazed by by what you guys did with that.
Well, from a marketing standpoint, it was for golf purists, so therefore we were catering to the better players by default, right?
Right.
It was a challenge with the seniors and women, because we had a lot of forced carries because the course was laden with wetlands.
Yeah.
And so some of the forced carries were very difficult. We had to get real creative with saying, oh my God, here's a little sliver of upland. Let's put a tee there.
Yeah.
And literally, I had my wetland scientist go out as I walked into the field. I'm going, it looks like there's some mounds of soil here, Chris, right? His name is Chris. Can this be delineated as upland? And he goes, it can, like, I got to probe it. I got to have a justification. And sure enough, like the 11th tee, you probably don't remember.
I know, that's the one I'm talking. It's still got a pretty good carry though, right?
We have a bridge. It has a good carry, right? But it has a bridge that goes over. It was a much better angle,
Yeah.
right? So there was a lot of attention to detail to be able to fit that course in. Wow. And the wetlands are the exceptional value watershed, right? Which is the highest level of protection in the state of Pennsylvania as far as watersheds are concerned. Bog turtle study we had to do.
Who turtle?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was I had.
That held you up for a while too, didn't it?
Well, just the process. Yeah, I'm not going to say a ton because it fell under the take a while hold up category anyhow.
Yeah.
Because we were in 3 townships. That's another thing. I mean, this is.
Oh boy.
Jack Lowe, who's the developer, has done major corporate centers and housing projects. He said this is, if not one of the most complex projects I've ever been involved in.
Because of that politic, because of all the townships involved?
3 townships. That's
so you had to get them all to agree at all at the same time.
Right. Well, we had to do historical archaeological.
Right.
Study. I mean, basically looking for arrowheads. You had to till certain areas and let it rain on it, or somehow figure out a way to water. We didn't have irrigation then. And they have an army of people going out looking for arrowheads and pottery. Right. Thank God we didn't find anything.
Or you found them and you put them in a box somewhere and you have them in your garage. I'd like a couple of those arrowheads, by the way, if you can. I didn't realize that was that complex of a project. How long were you with that property?
Let me see. So I was with 95 to 2008. I was
French
with
Creek?
that group. French Creek was built in the early, like 2001 or
it was early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
Were you ever superintendent there?
No, I was. I hired superintendent.
Yeah.
It's because I had, well, if I count Tumblebrook, where Mark Reed was at, I had 4.5 18-hole courses that were managed. Because Bucks County Country Club up near Doylestown, just north of Philadelphia, was another one we managed and fixed up and rerouted. That was with the Toll Brothers development, which was
right.
So I managed all of them.
You were just kind of tired of all that stuff and said, I'm out of here. And so let's get into the Dryject because I don't want to run out of time. I want to spend some time talking about this this machine that you guys are playing with now. So you left all of that, and then you found Dryject as a business, and you've gotten involved. And I mean, am I missing a?
Well, I'll try to cut this short.
All right, thank you.
So I went to a course where I was going to buy out the owner, and it was a mid-range daily fee. And only one course. And I'm like, let me settle back down to one course. I want to buy him out. That didn't work out.
Yeah.
Right. Then I went to be a manager at Broad Run, the last place. That's near Westchester. Again, it's just 30 miles west of Philadelphia. And managed that for 3 years. But it was turning in, the food and beverage historically there, they never really made a good go at it. And I'm like, we're going to make a go at this food and beverage operation.
Because you had your spreadsheet. You could figure it all out.
I had a spreadsheet. If it weren't for that, like it made it made the egg sandwiches taste so much better in my spreadsheet.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah. You put it on a spreadsheet, it's edible.
Exactly. It's like salt and pepper.
Exactly.
So my job started morphing in because I was babysitting the food and beverage. I'm there till friggin' midnight.
Making egg salad?
Making salads, right?
Making salads.
Just watching, just babysitting and watching and helping out food and beverage. And I said, I went to school for turf management. Yeah. Granted, I still was always talking to the superintendent there and had my hands involved with everything, but it just morphed into something that I didn't want to do anymore. And Dryject was me getting back to the agronomic world, if you will. Now I'm heavily involved with the business of running the business.
Right. Spreadsheet.
But it got me back closer to where I wanted to be. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be talking to you right now.
Oh, you'd still be talking to me. We go back too far. So for those of, I can't imagine anybody that would listen to our podcast would not know what Dryject is, but just in case there's one guy out there who doesn't know what Dryject is, tell us, Dryject 101, give us the elevator speech on what Dryject is all about.
Okay, well, we're an aeration and injection service for hire. Our machines we build are proprietary only to us. We don't sell them to the end users. We sell them to franchisees in the United States and licensees abroad. We're different than your normal aerification because we use high pressure water to make the hole in the ground. That's been done before. Toro had a machine that made holes in the ground with high pressure water, but they had no way to backfill it. Our claim to fame is we can fill that hole with the Venturi suction effect that the water makes when it's making. We can follow it right up with material to fill the hole up. If you're thinking about a putting green and aerification, most of the time it's sand. The name Dryject came because it had to be dry at the time. We now have the ability to use moist or wet sand or top dressing. So that's how the name Dryject got, because materials had to be dry.
So the Hydroject, which is what you were referring to, right? With Toro?
The Hydroject was a Toro machine.
Which was, at the time, very well received. Tiny little holes was not very fast, but it did nice work. So so you guys were kind of like the second guys on the block, and you came up with the ideas of, now I can not only open up a hole and blow some air in, but I can fill that hole with sand.
So I guess you could say we were second, or
whatever.
Like it was almost simultaneous to a certain degree, right?
Right. How old is Dryject?
Because Land Pride, big in the ag world,
right,
actually had the rights before Toro. So, and this is before my time. So the owners of Dryject had to work it out between all the parties that they had the right to do it. But Chris Degerenz with Dryject actually was right there, probably right along with Toro.
Yeah.
Getting rights with Land Pride, right? The Toro.
Okay. What year are we talking about?
This is like, he probably started on the project in 96 or 97-ish. Okay. Something like that. Or actually, probably 94, 95 now. I think about it, because I remember I had a demo at Chester Valley. It was shortly right before I left. So I left in 95. So it must have been 94 that he started this.
Yeah.
He went to the franchise model in the late 90s because he was offering the machine for sale.
Oh, I didn't know that. So Dryject is a Philadelphia business, for those who don't know. I mean, you guys are still in the Philadelphia area. So it started in close to our home. And you guys are now, I'm assuming, certainly national. Are you international?
Yeah, we have Japan, UK. I just signed somebody up in the UK. We had somebody before, they left on for other things. I just signed somebody new up. It's actually a classmate at Penn State, Ken Simmons. He's been over there for a while, and he's well known over there. We're Japan. Where else? We're China, right?
Really?
The guy's a U.S. citizen also, and that's a weird market. But if you want your equipment to be knocked off, you take it to China.
Right. Yes, that's the rumor on the street.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah. So of course we're in Canada.
Yeah.
We were in South Africa, but they stopped. With South Africa is a great market. We want to get there. We're in South Korea.
So Dryject has been shooting sand into the ground for a long time. When was it? I mean, we got involved with you obviously because we had some amendments that would go in with the system. When did you guys start moving beyond sand for the Dryject? When did it become obvious that, hey, I can actually get some goodies in here that would be, even better than just straight sand? Was that early on?
The answer is yes. It was kind of early on because the superintendents would go, I got a salt problem, right? They're down in South Carolina, right? And whatever, in a spot and they want to put in some kind of gypsum type product. Can you mix a little bit of that in? Well, it depends on the particle size. It depends on how it's made, right? And so we would test it and we'd say, sure, we can. And a lot of times that would be blended with sand. Right. Again, it had to
all the time,
dry.
Right? Yeah, you would never shoot a gypsum straight in there without sand.
No, it would be, the rates would be outrageous.
Ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then porous ceramics, right? Diatomaceous earth type products.
Well, we brought the Ecolite to the Dryject and started injecting Ecolite in there, the Zeolite material. And then we actually started going beyond that into some of the carbon-based materials. I know we inject Renovate Plus into a lot of your clients' Dryject process by just mixing it in to the back of a Cushman hopper in the sand, couple, maybe a bag per hopper or so, and you go. How much sand, when you guys are doing a Dryject on 18 holes, how much sand are we talking about?
Oh God. So
So
it could be anywhere between.
Where's your spreadsheet, man?
That's right. I got to open up. Oh my God, I got to open up.
Get your spreadsheet open. You know the answer.
Well, okay. So our range, depending on our spacing and the depth that we shoot to go, right? Will anywhere from 250 pounds of sand per 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
Right, to all the way up. If you go to our maximus, we can almost get to 1,000 pounds
per 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. That's when we're going really deep, bigger nozzles and bigger cones, a bigger profile
right.
shot. Right.
Yeah.
So convert that over, and again, the square footage of greens on a given golf course has a huge factor. Sometimes they're at 80,000, some have 180.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Some of the Wilmington Country Club. Oh my God, massive. I got to have a sidebar. When I first took this job, I say, I got to go out and I got to run a machine because I got to know what it's like to run a machine, even though I do mostly admin work and science work and spreadsheet work and all that, right? And believe me, it kicked my butt running that machine because you're kind of tense when you run it. But at Wilmington Country Club, I went on that job and I'm like, oh my God, these greens are enormous. And I'm staring down at the 18th green because I'm up on the green above it. I don't know which one it is. I'm like, please, I want another operator to get to that green before me because I am going to die. Well, they didn't get there. That green is about 3 times as big as most greens in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so it will make a difference. So anywhere between 20 and 45 tons of sand could go on any given golf course of dry sand. Into
the ground. And all but healed over as soon as you leave.
Yeah, well, it's smooth. It's not healed over. But
well, it's playable. Let's say that.
Right, exactly.
Better choice of words. Sorry.
We fill the holes. You don't have to. If you were to core or solid tine, you got to drag the greens aggressively, bruise the greens, spend the labor time to do it, and then your playability isn't as good. There's just no way.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not as playable.
Right.
And so that's been really the great benefit of Dryject is that, when you guys are done, they can play on the surface without really getting a lot of, guys screaming and yelling at them.
Yeah.
Do you know of any good stories of any members yelling at you guys while you're doing this? I mean, there's got to be a couple stories.
I'm sure, but I'm not in the field that much. If they would have saw me, they probably would have yelled at me.
Yeah, well, we all do. We usually typically do. So you mentioned Maximus. What else is available Dryject wise? I mean, you've got the traditional Dryject, which is injecting, I guess more shallowly. Is that the difference between what you guys have done? You've built a lot of machines over the years.
Right. So our most popular is a 3-inch by 3-inch spacing. Mm-hmm. Our manifold, which is fixed, right, or big aluminum manifold, heavy manifold, is spaced at 3 inches. So that's a fixed. Our forward speed, we can actually go 2 inches if we want, right? Or we can go less. It doesn't get chosen much. But
right.
3 by 2, 3 by 3 is chosen the most, right? We can go 3 by 4. That's not popular. 3 by 3 represents probably 70% of our work, and the 3 by 2 is the remaining 25.
And a superintendent has that option to choose the spacing that you guys would use on the green?
Yes. The pricing will change because it just slows our.
It's slower. It's time.
We just go slower.
Time and volume, yeah.
And then our Maximus, right? And let me just back up. We can go anywhere from 2 inches on that setting down to our guys have sometimes, depends on the soil and the tightness of the soils. We've actually on our regular settings can get 7 or 8 inches at times, right? Not all the time. Yeah. We can get 5 almost all the time easy, 5 to 6, right?
You're talking about depth.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. If they're going to dilute the organic matter, which is really accumulating at the surface, they should stick to 2 to 3 inches.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if they're traditionally solid tined or hollow tined, and if that solid tine or hollow tine is always have been historically going 3 inches deep, you actually get a little compacted layer because at the end of that stroke of that
Plow pan.
solid tine is a little layer, and a lot of guys hire us say, I want to get through that.
Right.
And of course, there's other ways to do that. You could go out and you could get a deep tine.
Right. Just
You could use
poke a
the,
hole through it.
and there's different ones, different makes of the deep tine.
Yeah.
If we can break through that, we can put a shaft of sand through it and memorialize that hole, if you will.
Yeah.
So our
So-
Maximus, I clog up every other hole on that fixed 3 inch, make it 6 inch, put bigger nozzles in, way more water, right?
Yeah.
Bigger cones to take the dry material in, and put a shaft 9 to 10 inches deep. So if they're looking for good through drainage, they want to get
Right.
down, right? That's our answer to like a drill and fill.
Yeah, and you're really breaking through what you were describing as that plow pan is
Yeah.
where that spot is. And not only that, I mean, the way, if you look at the pictures of the soil profile, you come down and then you kind of kick out. So you leave a like a bell bottom, if you will, at the bottom of the hole. So it's not just a straight hole. There's an expansion area there.
Yeah, ours is more like an explosion. I
Right.
like to use it's an earthquake under the ground. When that explosion of water goes down, it fractures out laterally.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean, compared to, going out and doing a traditional aerification, hitting it, pulling the plugs, blowing them off, and then coming back with a sand application. You guys are all in and out in one application, and it's smooth and playable. And I can't imagine that the return on investment, and just in terms of the ability to play, is significant when you're talking using a Dryject system as opposed to having to go through the hassle. I mean, you did this for a long time. I don't know a superintendent in the world that loves to go out and airify. I can't wait. It's airification season. Let's go do this. This will be a lot of fun. I like getting screamed and yelled at for 2 hours by my members and all that stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see what the difference is between what you guys are doing and what you can do on your own property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we just need to keep getting the word out. Traditionally, when they first started, they went after the high-end private clubs, right? Because a lot of your leaders, great superintendents are there. They're the ones willing to do some experimenting, I guess. And they want to be on the cutting edge. And so we traditionally have done private clubs big time. And that kind of hurt us in a way because the mentality was only the private clubs can afford to hire us.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. So,
I know that feeling.
And we're like, no, not really. Actually, you daily fee operators are the ones that actually could benefit from us the most as far as leaving the greens smoothly. Because
the return on investment.
Green fees every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we've lived that life at Earthworks. Biological soil management allows us to reduce inputs. It really benefits, some of the tighter clubs because sustainability allows them to reduce inputs. This project of yours allows guys to get this thing in and out done and people back on the course. My local golf course, when they aerify, they're closed for a week and they literally give hamburgers away for 2 weeks because nobody wants to come after aerification. And I remember having a conversation with them. I said, why don't you guys just Dryject? Oh yeah, that might make sense. Think about the money that they first of all, they wouldn't, they lower their greens fees and they give away hamburgers.
Right.
We, those of us that are hackers, we love aerification week because we can't putt anyway. So we'll get a free hamburger.
And they lose play because the other ones that don't care about the free hamburger, they go down the road to the guy that didn't airify yet.
Yeah. And you guys are in and out generally in what, a day or two?
With 1 day.
1 day. So you're in and out in 1 day. So you're essentially closed down for 1 day, but the next day the playing surface is really not radically, unless it's, unless you're the elite golfer, but it's not going to affect
Right.
potability. And it's just, the return on that investment, especially in this day and age. And imagine with where we are with COVID, and that, I think the statistic now is golf is up 30%. I mean, the last thing any good golf course wants to do is shut down for a week and give hamburgers away for 2 more weeks. I mean, it just becomes a no-brainer, which is why we've always been an advocate, let alone the fact that we can get better stuff into the ground and deeper down. I mean, if you can get, we've always said at Earthworks that the most important nutrient in turf management is air. I've asked this at every class I've ever given. I asked a goofy question, what's the most important nutrient? And, and everybody says nitrogen, calcium. I'm like, no, it's oxygen, it's air. And we can't sell that to you. And then one time some guy, puts his arm up and says, well, I can do that. I'm a franchisee for Dryject. I can sell you air. I'm like, you know what? You can't sell them air. That's really what you're selling, is something that you really can't theoretically sell. Is you're selling oxygen. Not only are you giving roots, space to move, but you're giving oxygen to microbiology and providing an agronomic environment that is so imperative in a golf course with the physical kind of pressure that we get, day in and day out, which is why we've been such big advocates of what you guys are doing. Certainly not because of our relationship, because that would have blown it from day
Yeah,
one.
it would have ruined it.
It would have ruined it. But it's, but the concept of the machine is, and again, it's, you guys have had your battles of, quality control, getting the things going, but 99.9% of the thing, that system is smooth as can be, and you're in and out in a day. And people that are, that come in the next day, they basically got aerification done in a day and didn't skip a beat.
Yeah.
And if you put some, what we've noticed is that we get a little bit of, of stuff into that sand, the actual grass heals over the holes that are already there. So, it really is an ideal system.
Yeah, we're excited about the fact that we can mix products like yours in. Now, the superintendent makes all these decisions.
Of course.
We let them know that it's possible.
Yeah, they could do almost within reason, I'm guessing. I'm sure there's things. And the other thing you don't necessarily want to do, you don't want to shoot a lot of synthetic nitrogen 6 inches down in the hole. You want to shoot physical amendments. You want to shoot carbon amendments. You want to shoot minerals. You don't want to be putting down your 20-20-20 into a Dryject and then have, stuff coming through the top. But imagine what you can do on both sand and on soil to really impact the value of that agronomic. It's just a brilliant concept. What's new with Dryject? What's coming out? What are you guys are always, I talk to you all the time, and you're always tinkering in the back shop there behind the wall, I'm assuming, where you're sitting now. You're tinkering with something. Is there anything you can talk about that you guys are working on that's coming around the corner?
Well, I can tell you something that's already been talked about, and it's actually being worked on, but we need to improve it more, is what we call HD, high density. Okay. And so we took that 3-inch on center manifold and we stacked 2 together. And so therefore then they were 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
Right? And then of course our forward speed could go anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5, 3, right? So we could get more than twice as many holes as what we're getting now. Our challenge is that double stacking of the manifold is kind of heavy, right? It still worked, but the configuration of the 1.5 and 1.5, there was too much water associated with it, right? Now, not all the time, and it's a messier job, right? It's not what we're all about. We always say we're really clean. Now, we've had superintendents says, I don't care about the mess, right? Because you are putting so much sand, because part of their goal is to dilute a level of organic matter that's gotten away with them, or maybe they had just taken a new job and it had gotten away from whoever was there before.
Or
right?
just physical compaction. It doesn't even have to be organic matter.
It could be, right? It could, all of the above.
Yeah.
And so we have done a reasonable amount of jobs for that, but when we want to perfect it, we're actually looking at making a whole new manifold and starting it at 2 inches on center, 1 manifold. And so if I want to go to our second most popular setting, which is 3x2, I just change the ground speed going forward. It's fixed to 2 in a manifold. I just go 3 this way.
Yeah.
Right. Or I could go 2 by 2.5, or I could go 2 by 2. Because the coring machines that are out there, and they also have solid tines, most of them, not all of them, have the ability to be set at a 2x2, the quadratines and all that. It would be our way of competing. Like I'll compare it to embroidery, have a higher stitch count.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's even better too if you wanted to use. I wanted to put the Micro Replenish, or if I wanted to put a Renovate Plus in, to have the higher stitch count, and I get it to the depth that we want. I'm getting a more homogeneous distribution of your product, as well as sand or whatever else they're mixing with your product.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something we're bullish on. We got to get it done.
This is not out yet, or you're working on that, the HD?
We're working on it.
Okay.
Again, we did it in a way we thought was a quick fix, where we stacked two manifolds together.
Right.
We had to make the frame, we had to get all the couplings together and make it work and plumb it correctly, right? But then we're like, it's messier, it's too aggressive, 1.5 by 1.5.
Yeah.
Let's just go with 2, right? And that should lessen that overabundance of moisture that's associated with our machine, right? We definitely think it's going to tip the scale to be in the clean category again, and still function the way we want it to function, still get that, the material out in it. So,
well, that's pretty cool. It's always
the other thing that's out there already. I just got to get this, is we have the ability to put the wet sand in. I had mentioned that earlier.
Yes, you touched that. So what does that mean? You can get wet sand. I mean, so now you don't have to have kiln drying. You don't have to go to the expense of kiln drying. So you can get almost any local sand source and
that's
run
great.
Through that.
Now in the Philadelphia market where we're at, it's not a whole heck of a lot of difference in price. There is a difference, no doubt, right? But if you go out to Colorado, it's $300 a ton for dry sand. It's absurd. 5, 6, 7 times as much for the kiln dry. It's because they don't have a plant nearby, and you're paying a bloody fortune just for it to get shipped out there, the freight. And so what happens is, of course, if we have the wet sand ability or moist,
right,
it opens up the market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
And you guys can get that through the system without affecting speed, time, delivery, and all that stuff. I mean,
so what we're finding, of course, it doesn't flow as well. So we're finding that it gets about 80% the same volume down, right? Which is still damn good. So if you were going to pay 5 times as much for sand, you'd gladly give up that 20% to save your money.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right? So that's all good, and we're always trying to tweak that. Like, what can we do to get it to agitate maybe a little more, so it flows a little better? I mean, wet sand is a weird beast how it flows, right?
Yeah, it flows.
That's why they don't make hourglasses out of wet sand.
I've heard that. Yeah, probably wouldn't be a good idea, would it? Try it once and see how it goes. It's always funny. Every time I come to your shop, there's always some tinkering going on in the back over there. And it's like, wow, what the heck are you guys wearing? Oh, I can't show you this. We're going to get wet sand through. Whatever. Yeah. Hey, I hate to tell you this, but we've just pretty much exhausted an hour. But if somebody wanted to get introduced to Dryject, how does a superintendent find you guys?
Well, our website, dryject.com.
There you go.
And there's a tab that lists all of our service centers.
Okay.
So depending on what state they're at, it's clearly marked. They would see the name of the company that has a Dryject service, contact person, phone number, email address. Corporate is always available to take phone calls, answer technical questions. But the best bet is to talk to our service people out there that they know how it works.
They're doing it. They're the guys out in the field. They own the machines. They're running out doing it. Do you have holes in the country where you don't have franchisees, where you don't have service centers?
Well, we're in the business of making holes, Joel.
I knew we couldn't get through.
We got a ton of holes in this country. So
franchisees, there's another plug for you. You could have, if you're looking to fill a hole, let's call Dryject.
Yeah, exactly.
But
we do, and I'm glad you asked that question.
Yes, of course.
So out in the Midwest, we still have Kansas open. The majority of Illinois, believe it or not, which blows my mind.
Really?
There's no rhyme or reason, I guess, why some places are open.
Yeah.
Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. What a great state. They got like 390 golf courses. We kind of use golf as a foundation to what we would think is a good territory.
Yeah.
Good territory starts at like 225 courses as inventory. Wherever there's a good demographics for golf, there's good demographics for sports fields.
Right.
Of course,
Exactly.
we do sports fields. We
Of
do
course you do.
professional
We didn't
sports
mention
fields.
that, but we should have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we do the Eagles fields. We do a lot of other ones.
Don't drop
So,
any names. Don't do anything like that.
yeah. The heck.
Well, listen, Jeffrey, it's always a pleasure to work with you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm shocked that we got through this as safely as we have, because if anybody knows us as a group, they know that, wow, they just went through an hour without, being completely goofy, which is wonderful. And I'm grateful that you came and joined us. It was a lot of fun. I wanted people to hear the story of Dryject and of Jeff Broadbelt, and I wanted to just see for my own edification if we could actually get through an hour together that we could publish in public air.
Joel, the people that know us are probably going to be disappointed.
I know. I'm going to say there's going to be a lot of, that was horrible. I wanted so much more from you guys.
It was all watered down.
Exactly. But anyway, let me say thank you once again. It's been a pleasure. We'll continue to work with you. I obviously want to encourage anybody listening. If you don't know Dryject, you should at least explore what it can do for you, because I do believe strongly the ROI, the return on investment, what you guys provide is significant. And going into a year like 2021 with 30% more golf, you don't have time to spend 2 weeks of closure or getting screamed at and yelled at. And so hopefully that makes some sense. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's joined us on the Earthworks podcast. There's an awful lot of stuff on our website at soilfirst.com, earthworksturf.com, including all the stuff that we just broadcast on the GIS virtual show. And if you are not a subscriber to the podcast, please join us so you can hear some interesting people like Mr. Jeff Broadbelt from Dryject. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks, Joel.